Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence, we go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun. All right, guys. Today's date, July 17, 2024, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm host most Will Buchanan on the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense of it all. Before we get started, guys, let you know that we are a news podcast. We do try to do our best to give you news from the most reputable sites. With award-winning journalism and research, we do not do sensational news like Fox News, The Blaze, Newsmax. Wherever you get your extreme left or extreme right sites from, we simply don't do that. We give you the facts and nothing but the facts. At the same time, guys, we do try to maintain our language, but let's be honest, words fly. Oh, and also at the same time, guys, maybe things that might be shown that might be too intense for younger viewers, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So, possibly as of what's going on right now, is the RNC Day 3. Now, we are not covering that because, let's be honest, it is an ass-kissing show. And yes, I know, I already started. We're not even 3 minutes into the podcast, and I've already said ass. But yes, the RNC is an ass-kissing show. Not too long ago, the Republican VP that was just announced a couple of days ago literally took the stage. A whole lot of ass-kissing. A whole lot of white savior Trump. That's really all you need to know. But there is other things that we need to get into, starting with the thing that, well, let's be honest. Let's really be honest how we feel about the situation. But yes, we have to cover it.
Of a plot to assassinate former President Trump, a plot with no known connection to Saturday's assassination attempt, I should mention. That's obviously very noteworthy. Let's bring in senior justice correspondent Evan Perez for the details on this. Evan, what do you know?
Well, Brianna, in recent weeks, the U.S. government received intelligence from a human source that indicated that the Iranians were plotting to try to kill former President Donald Trump. Now, that led immediately to an increase in the protection for the former president. We heard over the weekend from the Secret Service that in recent weeks they had increased their protection for the former president. And so the question was exactly why. We now know that this is the reason why. It was specific intelligence that was deemed to be credible enough, and that's the reason why they increased the protection for the former president. It's very important to point out that there is nothing to indicate at this point, in part of this investigation of the events on Saturday, that the shooter, the would-be assassin that tried to assassinate the former president on Saturday, there's no indication that it had anything to do with this Iranian plot. It appears to be a coincidence, obviously, but it is one of those things that is raising new questions, I think, for the Secret Service and for everybody involved in the protection of Donald Trump, how it was that these events took place as they did on Saturday. How did someone, this 20-year-old person, get onto that roof, again, knowing that they had this intelligence, the Secret Service was aware of this intelligence, and they had taken, obviously, some additional steps. But how did that person get on a roof and be able to fire off these shots that almost killed Donald Trump? Those are very, very big, important questions that you're going to have, Secret Service are going to have to answer in the coming weeks. And then the other issue, obviously, is how much of this played into some of the preparations for this rally. We know that over the period of months that the former president's campaign has been told and has been warned by the Secret Service about the inherent risks of holding these very large, these outdoor events where it's inherently more risky for his security. And the Secret Service would much prefer for Donald Trump or anyone who's running for office like this to hold events in a closed environment where they have better control of who gets in and out and who might have access to him. And so the question there is, were they aware of, to our knowledge, they weren't necessarily read in on the specifics of this plot, but the question is, should they be holding these outdoor events
So we're going to stop it right there because let's be honest, we've all heard it by now who the shooter was, how he was identified. And I think I speak on behalf of all people of color. We can sit there and go, woo, it wasn't us, which we kind of expected it wouldn't be us. But still, a 20-year-old man who decided that day he wanted to unalive a former president, now a convicted felon, and missed. I don't want to be petty right now. I'm trying my hardest. I am trying my hardest not to say what I would like to say. However, I will put it this way. There's a certain Disney movie about a certain character with a certain guardian dragon that happens to say exactly what I said in the movie as he's on a propellant, if you will. If you know the scene, you know what I'm getting at. You know my opinion on that. But again, it amazes me so the outpouring. Like now you have foreign governments wanting to take Trump out. I'm not saying it's not possible, considering the fact that he's probably the most compromised president ever in history. Every foreign government seems to love him. So I kind of really am weird. I'm kind of confused by the fact by the same governments that he helps easily are the same ones that want him to be taken off the board, if you will. Makes no sense. But then again, a lot of people had opinions about the attempted unaliving of the former president. And again, it's amazing now that he's walking around with a bandage that most medical professionals wouldn't put on an ear. Which again, I'm trying not to be that guy, but if a guy is shooting at you and yet somehow your ear's intact, I'm just saying, putting a Band-Aid on a scrape when, the teleprompter caught it, supposedly, I'm just saying. But I'm going to say this because this is the best way I can say this about the situation. Trump told parents of school shootings, you're going to eventually have to get over it. Trump made fun of Nancy Pelosi when her husband was attacked. Trump wasn't very comforting to those of mass shootings. So it is amazing to me now that in the word of karma that seems to come back and haunt Trump, now all of a sudden he's a badass. They tried to take him out, but it didn't work. I'm like, no. I'm going to say to Trump what Trump had no problem saying to other people. Get over it. I mean, it's only fair, right? But at the same time, it is also a knock on Secret Service because the last time a president's life was ever in danger with the Secret Service was probably Bush, and it was a shoe. Bush 2.0 got thrown a shoe, and he was dodging that. This individual got within 200 to 400 yards of the former president, and yet I'm trying to figure out how. Unless, for simple fact of the matter, the Secret Service was lax on that day. But as it is, Trump, again, is running with it. Everybody's like, they try to take him. He's too strong. Even 50 Cent had some fun with it, but 50 Cent trolls everybody, so that's not surprising. But again, it amazed me so that he had an assassination attempt on him. And now, yeah, True Social did go up in stock shares. People are coming out with that shirt of him with the fist up, bleeding from the ear, but the fist is up in the air like he's some plastic memorial. I mean, look, those shirts were already hitting the shelves like 10 minutes after it all happened. So the grifting is real. And trust me, from the guy who grifts his own people to keep himself afloat, they should know. But anyway, let's go ahead and get to the meat of the matter because Trump also this week did announce his VP. And I'm going to get to that. I'm going to get to those who didn't make it. Well, let's just talk about the guy who did make it.
Has been an outspoken advocate for Donald Trump's MAGA movement as a senator, but he's about to enter a much brighter spotlight as a relatively untested first-term lawmaker turned vice presidential nominee. Tonight, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance launched into the national political spotlight.
We proudly cast our 79 votes for President Donald J. Trump and J.D. Vance.
The freshman senator was first elected in 2022, Raised in poverty, Vance enlisted in the Marine Corps and was deployed to Iraq. He later graduated from Yale Law School and wrote the best-selling memoir Hillbilly Elegy before turning to politics, first as a Republican Trump critic.
I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him.
Eventually becoming one of the former president's most outspoken admirers.
I was wrong about Donald Trump. I didn't think he was going to be a good president, Brett. He was a great president.
Vance is largely aligned with Mr. Trump's MAGA makeover of the GOP, opposing abortion rights and aid for Ukraine.
That's the whole reason why me and so many others are trying to reelect Donald Trump, is because the agenda actually worked.
Supporters already adding his name to campaign signs, while RNC co-chair Laura Trump cheering her father-in-law's pick.
I think he'll be a great partner, and I think he'll be a great advocate for this country.
Is he too much like Donald Trump to help you expand your coalition?
Is there anything like too much like Donald Trump? Can you get too much Donald Trump? I don't think so.
Tonight, the Biden campaign blasting the choice with a statement reading in part, Donald Trump picked J.D. Vance as his running mate because Vance will do what Mike Pence wouldn't on January 6th, bend over backwards to enable Trump and his extreme MAGA agenda. Garrett Haake, NBC.
And yet, Mr. Vance, as you see right there, of course, it amazes me because the hype train has already started for Mr. J.D. Vance, a guy who, let's just be honest, little bit of a hypocrite. This is the same guy that turned around and said that if you're in an abusive marriage, that you should stay together. He's the same guy that said LGBTQ plus is seen more as a hate group than anything else. He's also a guy who called himself an anti-Trump guy and actually referred to Trump as America's Hitler. So it is amazing to me because I was curious, what do the ultra-right think of this pick? Even more so, the fact that he is married to a Hindu woman, has mixed children, and yet is so supposed to be the face of MAGA. Well, Nick Fuentes, or I like to call him the guy that wants to be Trump so bad that he'll do anything and say anything, well, he had an interesting take on it.
It also has a non-white wife, an Indian wife, and a kid named Vivek. All his kids have Indian names. So it's like, what exactly are we getting here? And that's not a dig at him just because I'm a racist or something. But it's like, who is this guy really? Do we really expect that the guy who has an Indian wife and named their kid Vivek is going to support white identity? Like, there's a white genocide going on in the world. White people are being systematically replaced in America and Europe through immigration and to a much lesser extent due to intermarrying. This guy has a non-white wife and a kid named Vivek. This guy is going to be a defender of white identity? I don't think so. This guy's going to defend American identity? If he does, it's going to be no better than any of these other civic nationalists like Vivek Ramaswamy. How else could you countenance American identity if you have a mixed up family like that?
Yes, because, America is so white that supposedly you're speaking on diverse issues, and yet you should be able to. But it's Nick Fuentes. What do you expect? I mean, he's basically Trump-like. But the point I'm getting at is J.D. Vance is an interesting pick because I laugh because Tim Scott, Vivek Ramaswamy, the governor for North Dakota, and I'm forgetting Mr. Byron, they were those, and I point out those three guys specifically because were they pulling that Trump train as far as they can. Tim Scott was hoping Massa would pick him for VP. Vivek Ramaswamy was like, "Oh, well, I'm just radical enough for Trump to pick me." And Mr. Byron, I'm Mr. Oh, well, black people did well under Jim Crow. Maybe Massa Trump will take me. It is amazing to me that I keep finding myself saying, "I told you so." Because in the world of the GOP, there's only one group of people that cares about themselves. You cannot, and again, argue with me if you want to. I'm waiting for it. You cannot be black and conservative. You cannot be Latino and conservative. You cannot be a woman and conservative. Why? Because you're basically trying to represent a party that has nothing or wants nothing to do with you. It is amazing to me how many times we've seen, I have sat there and said on this podcast, the day that the GOP has a I'll even do basic. The day the GOP, outside of Sarah Palin, who is as white and as less than trailer trash, because to compare her to trailer trash is an insult to trailer trash. But that's as far as you'll get. You won't get someone who's smart and intelligent and of color. You won't. Tim Scott and Mr. Byron thought that was going to happen for them. That's laughable. Vivek Ramaswamy thought it was going to happen for him. That's laughable. I was going to say, Trump's old nemesis, who is now speaking at the RNC, again, laughable. It is laughable how all of these people who all at one point, except for Mr. Byron, at one point said how much of a danger Donald Trump is. Now at the RNC kissing the ring. And yet J.D. Vance is now the Republican prom queen. I don't feel bad for Mr. Tim Scott, who magically got a girlfriend during his presidential election, who of his presidential election run, who magically got engaged, who was going to plan a wedding and then all of a sudden called off the wedding. I wonder why. At the same time, Vivek Ramaswamy is now still being the ever so cheerleader because he hopes that somewhere along the line there is a position, if Trump makes it that far, that there's a position in Trump's new cabinet, and he hopes he gets a position. I keep saying this all the time when it comes to GOP. They don't care about people of color. They don't care about women. They care about old white guys, men, if you want to be honest about it. Other groups, you just don't have a seat at the table. And I don't care how many times they try to sit there and say, oh, he would be a very good pick. They said something about Herman Cain before he was no longer with us. How many times he kept on saying, oh, he would be a good presidential candidate. And what happened? Libya. Again, fell off the deep end. And again, we see women coming forward. Women don't make it that far in the GOP. Why? Especially in this case, because Trump is every conservative's delusional wet dream. And we have seen what happens when you go against the GOP. It's better to go with the mob than to go against it. And as you can see, all those ones out there, including Mr. J.D. Vance himself, Mr. I'm an anti-Trump guy, Mr. I'm calling him America's Hitler, Mr. We could do better than Trump, is now his VP running mate. Oh, it's amazing what happens when power is given to you by the people you don't like. You find out who people really are. That's all I'm saying. But moving right along, guys, I did want to cover this because we have a grand opening, grand closing. Because Senator Mendez, remember that? The guy who was basically accused of bribery of being a purchased politician because gold bars and money and everything else was found at his house? Yeah, he's convicted. Found guilty, actually.
I'm deeply, deeply disappointed by the jury's decision. I have every faith that the law and the facts did not sustain that decision and that we will be successful upon appeal. I have never violated my public oath. I have never been anything but a patriot of my country and for my country. I have never, ever been a foreign agent, and the decision rendered by the jury today would put at risk every member of the United States Senate in terms of what they think a foreign agent would be. I know my attorney want to say something, and then I'll keep going.
Afternoon. We were surprised and disappointed with the jury's verdict. We disagree with it, and we believe today, as we have since day one, in Bob's innocence. There are grave appellate problems with this case and with this verdict, and we're going to pursue all appellate avenues aggressively.
Okay, so again, that's him being convicted, found guilty of a jury of his peers for all counts for federal corruption. This is a guy who had 16 counts: bribery, extortion, fraud, obstruction of justice, and now I guess we could say it now, acting as a foreign agent. So it is amazing to me that was just earlier this week. Well, it turns out, because ever since his conviction, everybody has been saying on the Democratic side, you need to resign. Just go ahead, bow out gracefully. You've been convicted. Just do the right thing. Well, it turns out he actually did it.
Is joining us now from Capitol Hill. Ryan, it wasn't 30 minutes ago that you and I were on the air here talking about the possibility that something like this could happen. And now he is, will you tell us, the reporting seems to suggest he is calling folks and telling them, has he filed anything formally on this yet?
As far as we can tell, he has not filed anything formally yet, Hallie, and I do think that's an important part of this discussion. But what we can report, my colleagues Kate Santeles, Julie Sirkin, Carol Lee, and Frank Thorpe have been burning up the phones throughout New Jersey and Washington to try and get this information. And we have now concluded through various sources that Senator Bob Menendez is reaching out to allies and letting them know that he does intend to resign in the near future. When that happens, does he submit that letter today, tomorrow, later this week? That remains an open question, but he is at least telling people close to him that that is his intention. This, of course, does not come as a surprise, especially given the fact that 44 Democratic senators have already called on him to resign. Within that group of 44 senators, there have been a number, including his seatmate in New Jersey, Senator Cory Booker, who have said that they will move to expel him, maybe perhaps as soon as next week, if he does not submit that resignation letter. When we say 44 Democratic senators, Hallie, it's important to keep that in mind. Democrats control the Senate by just one vote. They have a couple of independents that caucus with them. And then there are 3 senators who sit on the Senate Ethics Committee. The senators that sit on the Senate Ethics Committee are not allowed to voice their opinion publicly about a matter like this because Menendez is also being investigated by the Ethics Committee. So when you take out the independents, you take out the senators named Menendez, and you take out the independents and the Ethics Committee people that are sitting in this committee, virtually every single Democratic senator has called on Menendez to resign. So it's not a surprise that he would take this step and do this on his own. Now, the way we understand the process is that the letter of resignation would first go to New Jersey's governor, Governor Murphy. He would get that letter, and then that letter would be transmitted to the Senate, which would then begin the resignation process. Governor Murphy would then appoint a temporary replacement for Menendez that would essentially serve out the end of his term. His term ends at the end of 2024. And of course, there is an active campaign right now to replace him under any circumstances. And we know Andy Kim, the New Jersey congressman, is the Democratic nominee. He won the Democratic primary. Now, there are still a number of wrinkles that need to be ironed out here, Hallie. Yes, we know that he's telling his allies that he plans to resign. He is technically still on the ballot as an independent candidate in the fall election. We have not gotten signals definitively as to what that means for his political campaign. You would assume that if he's not planning on staying in the Senate any longer, that he also would not intend to continue to run for re-election, but that's a live ball. That's something we don't specifically have reporting on yet, so that's one of the things we're trying to drill down. But the big news right now, Senator Bob Menendez telling his allies that he does intend to resign from the United States Senate, ending a prolific career in Congress. He served as a member of the House and a member of the Senate, rising all the way to the level as the powerful chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. And it was that post at the Foreign Relations Committee where prosecutors laid out a comprehensive case arguing that he was using his influence on that committee to benefit 3 different businessmen with ties to both Egypt and Qatar, and in exchange received close to $500,000 in cash, gold bars, a Mercedes-Benz for his wife, and many other gifts and benefits as a result of that transactional relationship that prosecutors were able to convince a jury he was convicted of. It's also worth pointing out, Hallie, as we break down the fallout from this case, this is now the second time that the Merrick Garland-led Department of Justice has won a conviction of a prominent Democrat in just the past couple of months. Of course, the first being Hunter Biden. That was through a special counsel investigation, but it was through the Department of Justice. Hunter Biden found guilty on that gun charge from just a couple of weeks ago. And now you have Bob Menendez, a sitting United States senator, found guilty through this Department of Justice and is now facing the prospect of decades in prison. That's a counterpoint to the situation you see.
So again, long story short, Republicans, that's what you're supposed to do when you're convicted. There's no need to appeal. At the same time, I'll give it to the Democrats. They have been saying since Menendez was indicted that you need to step down. He, again, was very adamant. Then when he had his trial and got convicted, they still said it. Step down or we'll get rid of you. Concerning the fact that, like the journalist said, they do have the majority in the Senate. Now, again, it is amazing to me how when it comes to Republicans, how it comes to Democrats, whenever they're convicted of something, yeah, take your L and leave. Because where his influence was, he was compromised and he was found out and he's still being investigated by the ethics committee. Again, bow out gracefully. You had a run, you got caught. Now it's time for you to go. No shame in that game. But at the same time, it's amazing to me how Democrats will easily follow the process of getting rid of those that are caught and found guilty versus Trump, who somehow, some way, got two of his biggest cases pushed back. And we're going to start with the first one because there is a DA in Georgia right now that has to wait for an appeal. This appeal could put the Georgia hearing past the election. Why? Because, again, Trump and his legal team using everything in their disposal when it comes to the law. But again, I'll let George Stephanopoulos explain.
Pending an appeal from Donald Trump. Rachel Scott has the details. Good morning, Rachel.
Hey, George, good morning to you. The Georgia election interference case against the former president is grinding to a halt. It was already very unlikely that this was a case that would go to trial before the November election, but now this move is making that more of a reality. Donald Trump and 18 other defendants were indicted in August, accused of participating in an elaborate scheme to try to overturn the results of the 2020 election. The Georgia Court of Appeals putting this case on hold while it reviews a lower court's decision to let Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis stay on the case. Now, for months, Trump has tried to get Willis removed, arguing that her romantic relationship with Special Prosecutor Nathan Wade created a conflict of interest. Back in March, a judge did allow Willis to continue to lead the prosecution as long as Wade resigned. Trump then appealed that decision, and now this matter could take months to resolve. Of course, it was just last week that the former president was found guilty, convicted on 34 counts of falsifying business records. His sentencing in that case is set for July 11th. That's just 4 days before he is supposed to be accepting the party's nomination at the Republican National Convention. Of course, the former president is also facing charges in 2 federal cases, one where he's accused of mishandling classified documents, the other also surrounding his alleged effort to try to overturn the 2020 election. Both of those cases now facing significant delays, also making it less and less likely that either of those would go to trial before the election, George.
As we wait on.
And that's crazy, isn't it? That basically his appeal, because for all those who don't remember, there was the Georgia case was, again, the election federal case, where Trump literally on the phone called the Secretary of State and said, we need to find a certain number of votes because we need to overturn this win from Joe we need to overturn this win from Biden. He called the Secretary of State looking for votes, a specific number of votes. If that's not election interference, I don't know what is. But that also being said, though, this also led to, Georgia DA Fani Willis, who was all but ready to go ahead and move forward with her case as prosecutor. Then it was found out that Fani Willis and her top prosecutor may have had a relationship. This led to another trial to see if Fani Willis was competent enough to still remain in the case as prosecutor, to which she showed from the witness stand how to lawyer and make Trump's prosecution team look bad. This eventually led to the judge actually doing sort of a tie, if you will, because they said, we cannot prove that, that your position as DA, that you've abused it, but at the same time, we will allow you to stay on the case, but it can only be one of you. Her top prosecutor resigned from the case. She remained on it as part of the decision. And now the Trump team at the time is now appealing said decision, saying that Fani Willis needs to be removed. Again, pushing the actual court date of Trump and his accomplices in the Georgia interference election case is now pushed back because they're appealing the decision from the first case of trying to get rid of Willis. You can't make this up. At the same time, does this appeal push back the original case? Yes, after the election. Unfortunately, it does. And it amazes me because I was really thinking that this case specifically, because it's election interference, if Trump is found guilty on this, that should be it. If you interfered in an election, you should not be able to run as president. You really shouldn't be able to. Even though technically outside of murder and being a traitor is the only two things that can stop you from running for the presidency. That's just the way it is in the Constitution. We actually need to change that. But that's just one case, and that's the election case. Here's the messed up part. The case in Florida where he basically had classified documents because he misread the Constitution, thinking because he's president, he could declassify everything and keep documents. That also got pushed back. Why? Because of the judge.
On hold, but tonight, case closed. A federal judge in Florida today handing Donald Trump a sweeping, unexpected legal windfall, dismissing the charges he'd faced for hoarding classified documents at his Mar-a-Lago estate after leaving the White House and then allegedly obstructing the government's efforts to get them back.
Violations of those laws put our country at risk.
Judge Eileen Cannon finding the appointment of that top prosecutor, Special Counsel Jack Smith, improper. Cannon, a Trump appointee, concluding in a 93-page decision that Smith's appointment by Attorney General Merrick Garland violated the Constitution, as Smith wasn't nominated by the president or confirmed by the Senate. That reasoning, a dramatic departure from every other court that's looked at the issue. The former president pleaded not guilty to the charges last summer. Today, Mr. Trump described as very happy with the court victory, according to a source who spoke with him, as he called for the dismissal of his 3 other pending cases. Lester asking President Biden to weigh in on the ruling.
Judge Cannon dismissed the documents case, as you may have heard, in Mar-a-Lago. Can I first get your reaction to that?
I'm not surprised.
And Laura, the Justice Department saying late tonight it plans to appeal.
Yes, that's right, Lester. The Justice Department giving the special counsel Jack Smith the authorization, the green light to appeal, saying Judge Cannon's decision today, quote, deviates from all other courts.
So crazy, isn't it? And the reason, and here's the thing, here's the kicker about all this. For a lot of people are wondering why this judge, Aileen Thompson, again, a Trump nominee appointed judge, which if you've been following my podcast, I have been saying I had a feeling about this judge because whenever there's a Trump appointed judge over a case that involves the former president / now convict, I get a little nervous because that judge can throw out the case. And lo and behold, she did. The reason why she did is that she says that Smith's appointment was unlawful and unconstitutional. A lot of people scratching their heads. Here's the problem with Miss Judge Eileen Cannon's summary. How could the appointment of a special counsel who at the beginning of this trial, at the beginning of all of this, the Trump team had requested a special counsel. Said special counsel is now Jack Smith. The Trump team requested this. And yet, now fast forward months later, the judge is now saying that special counsel who the Trump team wanted is now unlawful and unconstitutional. Therefore, the clerk is directed to close the case. I hope, Mr. Smith, you appeal. I hope that you come with a full force, because here's the problem with this, guys. There is no way, above all else, that we can sit here. This man it would be different if he had a closet or maybe a garage of some documents, maybe a couple of boxes here and there. This man had a storage unit. I'm sorry. He had a storage unit full of documents. He had folks who were not classified reading said documents, caught on tape admitting they probably shouldn't be reading said documents. And yet one judge has decided, nah, dismiss the case. So again, that appeal pushes that case. If it gets heard again, if it gets heard past the election. So what has Trump done? Successfully, 2 of the 3 bullets that were, forgive me for the back of the letter, but I know, terrible language, but that's the best way I can say it. 3 objects that were coming at his head, 2 of them he dodged. And now there's only 1 out there. And he can call them witch hunts after you all you want, but a lot of Americans are shaking their heads and going, how in the world, and I've said this before, this is why things like 2025, Project 2025, Agenda 47, this is why I keep saying we need to be active and vote, because they're going to try to push what they know and how they can get it to work. They're going to try to push it through. And you are now just seeing the preamble to it. We hadn't even got to Act 1 yet. This is just the prelude. This is the prelude. And to think, 2 cases that should have got him, that should have really discredited him from running for presidency, have now been pushed back to the end of the presidential season, the presidential candidate season. So now it's just like, again, people, I cannot stress this enough. You have to vote. You must vote, because if you don't want to see Act 2 of a convict that can become president. Act 1 was hard enough. Do you really want to see Act 2? Just saying. But some other news, I'm going to get to President Biden, because this may be too little too late, but points for effort, I guess.
This morning, President Biden is reportedly planning to endorse major changes to the Supreme Court, including term limits for justices and an enforceable ethics code. That's according to the Washington Post, citing 2 people briefed on the plans. Reproductive rights have been a major focal point of Biden's campaign since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade.
There's going to probably be 2 more appointments to the court. There's probably 2 people going to retire. Just imagine if he has 2 more appointments on that, what that means forever.
Biden returned to the campaign trail yesterday, visiting Las Vegas. Speaking to the NAACP, he took jabs at a comment Trump made during last month's debate about migrants taking black jobs.
Folks, I know what a black job is. It's the Vice President of the United States.
A new national poll taken after the assassination attempt on former President Trump shows it remains a tight race. Trump leading Biden 43 to 41%, still within the margin of error. But Biden faces more challenges within his own party, unhappy with his debate performance. Some lawmakers have now drafted a letter calling on the Democratic National Committee to delay a virtual roll call for Biden's nomination in the coming days, arguing it would shut down the possibility of picking another candidate. In audio obtained by ABC News.
So let me stop there, because it kind of goes into some Democrats still calling for Biden, which I still think it's crazy and stupid. But I love the fact of what was said at the beginning, that he wants to endorse major changes to the Supreme Court, term limits for justices. However, it needs detail. And I'm going to be honest with you, when I say it needs detail, it needs detail. Because for all those that don't know, Supreme Court justices is a lifetime appointment, unless you're convicted of a crime or, you're no longer on this mortal plane. That's the only 2 ways that you're going to be removed once appointed. Now, at the same time, the same term limits, I keep saying term limits all around should be on every branch of government, not just the Supreme Court. I would say this because, it not just, the only really branch out there would be the executives, because, a president can only serve 2 consecutive terms. You got to sit one out. I think for those in the Senate and the House of Representatives and the Senate should be the same way. I think for Supreme Court justices should be the same too. I think that it's high time that we look at the Supreme Court the same way we look at the Senate and at the House and the presidency. We cannot just expect no longer individuals to serve a lifetime and think they're going to, make right decisions depending on, who nominates them, especially in the sense that our Supreme Court needs to be balanced. We have more conservatives than liberal and progressives. I think we need a balanced Supreme Court. President Biden could have really done what the former convict did. He basically packed the Supreme Court to the conservative side. Biden, during his first term, could have done the exact same thing if he chose to. But the reason why I say it's too little too late, because again, this should have been one of the things that should have been done at the beginning. If you really want to show change, let's show the fact that, Congress is a nursing home with power, and that needs to change. The Supreme Court is looking more and more like the conservative death panels that they talked about during Obamacare. We can change that. And don't get me wrong, I like the fact of term limits for it. I also like the fact of an ethics code, because I have been saying a couple of times on this show that for the simple fact of the matter, that what needs to happen with the Supreme Court needs to answer to someone. I have been saying that. And the thing about Supreme Court is they don't answer anybody. It's literally, trust me, bro, when Clarence Thomas is basically getting flued out by billionaire Republicans, while you have Justice Alito being entertained by billionaires at $1,000 plate, that 100-gram plate events. These are people whose decisions will alter our way of life in our society as we see fit. They have to be above reproach. And if they are caught, they should face ethics and be removed. I've been saying this the whole entire time. The Supreme Court needs to answer to somebody besides Congress. And therefore, an ethics oversight committee makes perfect sense. And again, if the Democrats want to do it, all you got to do is what you should have done from the get-go. Line up, unify, talk about your accomplishments, and tell the American people what you want to do, instead of trying to always fact-check Republicans. Here's the thing about Republicans and conservatives. They're going to repeat every lie that they can think of, because when facts come to paper, there is nothing productive the GOP have done since their entire term of this 118th Congress. They've done nothing, achieved nothing, except positions and seats. They have done nothing for the American people, and it shows. But much like the South, until things have changed, they'll always vote for them. They'll always vote for conservatives and then shoot themselves in the foot. But Democrats, you have a golden opportunity here. I don't know what else to tell you, except do it. It's not that hard. The last thing I want to get from Biden is actually proposing a 5% annual cap on rent increases, because again, inflation is still around, still going on. And for all those that lives in apartments or homes, rent or mortgage is effing high. And at the same time, the cost of living in America anywhere, which again, I should have got the map of how much it costs to afford a 2-bedroom apartment in America. You have to have a job that's paying at least anywhere between $75,000, and that's on the low end. $75K on the low end to basically not even break even, but break under. But I do love the fact that he is calling for a 5% annual cap on increases for tenants of apartments and homes. Although I guess mortgages will come later. But here's the thing. It does need to get the increases always kill me, because if you've lived in an apartment, you've had a lease, it's still the same thing every year or 13, 14 months, whatever you decide to sign. Prices go up because they say to give you the continued service. And I've always asked this question, that why is it they're not a price lock in for rent in America every 5 years? Like every 5 years, you may have a slight increase, but that's every 5 years instead of whenever the lease runs out, because it's price gouging. It really is. But at the same time, I love what Biden is doing on this one. Is it too little too late? Yes, it is. But again, I see what he's doing. And it goes back to what I said about Democrats. You guys have to push forward the agenda on what you want to do. Unite behind Biden because you made that choice. And at the same time, show your work, show your accomplishments. Let the Republicans go floundering because they're going to do what they do best. Look at what you've done and poke holes in it, tell lies, and go from there. Appease their constituents by saying, look what the Democrats have done because they overspend, while Republicans give everything away to their hopper buddies and leave you with nothing, while praising the great God, Ronald Reagan, which, by the way, Ronald Reagan was a terrible-ass president. I don't know why conservatives love pointing him out. He was a horrible president. Records show that. But moving right along, guys, before we get to our feel-good segment, it never ceases to amaze me when I see stories like this, guys, because no matter how far you come in life, please don't try to tell me race is still not a thing in America, especially the simple fact of the matter is if you're an accomplished businessman, if you're an accomplished athlete, things of that nature, it is amazing when all you're trying to do is get a drink on a plane, and yet at least you go in handcuffs for no reason outside the fact that somebody looked at you and thought you were aggressive. Don't believe me? Ask Terrell Davis.
Terrell Davis demanding accountability after he says he was handcuffed and removed from a United Airlines flight.
My son politely asked, excuse me, may I please have a cup of ice? And so I put my hand up like this and said, excuse me, and he didn't see it. So then I reached and tapped him on his shoulder. And that's when he swung back and said, don't hit me. And I'm a little confused as to, I didn't hit you.
The Broncos legend traveling to California with his wife, Tamiko, and 3 kids. When they landed, he said the pilot asked all passengers to remain seated. Then, according to Davis, 6 FBI and law enforcement officers boarded the plane.
They come right towards me. And at that point, my mind is like, what the heck is going on? I'm in shock that this guy is actually putting handcuffs on me.
His 3 children were looking on.
I was powerless. I couldn't do anything.
And our kids, they were helpless. You know, it was the absolute most horrifying experience of my life.
Davis said he was questioned for what felt like 45 minutes.
They apologized, talked about how this was not what they had gotten, reported.
The FBI telling NBC News their agents were responding to a report of a violent assault.
Did you feel as if you were racially profiled on that flight?
Yeah, I felt like that played a role.
United Airlines said in a statement it has removed the flight attendant from duty while it investigates. This is clearly not the kind of travel experience we strive to provide, and we have reached out to Mr. Davis's team to apologize. But Terrell and Tamiko Davis say they're now left trying to help their kids process what happened to their dad.
Unfortunately, because of the beautiful color of your skin, your experiences in this world are going to be different. And unfortunately, at 13, 11, and 9, you've had an experience.
Terrell, if the flight attendant was sitting in the seat that I'm in right now, what would you say to him?
I would want to know why. Why would you want to ruin a man's life like that? And I didn't want him to answer those questions in front of my children, like look them in the eyes and tell them why they tried to harm, destroy their dad.
Yasmin Vasugian.
And again, I hate to say this because only Black people, we all have our story. I've said this multiple times. I don't know what it is about us, but when it comes to our people, every Black person has that story. It may not be an airline attendant. It might be a law enforcement officer. It might be a waitress. It might be somebody at a store or a vendor. It might be, somebody at your job. It might be your boss. It might, whatever it is, we've all got a story similar to that. And, a long time ago, whenever we felt slighted, I always sat there and said, I've always looked at the history of this kind of stuff, where whenever a person of color was denied service somewhere, and that service depended on Black people boycotted that service. It's almost to the point to where it was bankrupt. It's happened many times in history where I've always sat there and said, apologies are great, but, hit them where it hurts. Their money. Now, of course, it's United Airlines. You can't pick, technically you can pick the plane you can fly on, but I just imagine, if you will, that every person of color decided, you know what? we're not going to fly United. We're going to pick another airline. Imagine United taking a big hit from the fact that a lot of people decided not to fly for a single day. We've seen what happens when airlines get delayed a few days when their system's down. We saw it with Southwest. Their system was down and it cost billions of dollars. Imagine all those passengers, all those Black beautiful passengers decide to go fly somewhere else outside United Airlines. Their bottom line drops. Their stock prices drop. Immediate apologies. And I just keep thinking to myself, I miss that type of protesting action. Because yes, you got your point across, but these corporations these corporations only pay attention to one thing and one thing alone, the bottom line. And unless you hit them there, it's just going to be an apology. I'm sorry, some vouchers, and we'll try to do better. We will put this person in diversity training. We will put this person, they'll say anything because now they're in the hot seat for one of their employees. And of course, we'll see what happens, but let's be honest. They'll probably have a sit down with Terrell. They'll probably offer him a place on the, they can't say DEI anymore because too many companies trying to get rid of that. But trust me, they'll do something as part of their PR to say, hey, we've recognized the problem and we're now trying to solve it. But again, this unfortunately is the story of a Black person in America, because no matter how well our parents try to protect us, we all have a story to where we found out how quickly where we stand in America. Again, we all got a story. But we're going to move on to our feel-good segment, because usually on How the Frack We Got Here, we usually cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom, sometimes makes you faith in humanity. But hey, it's Wednesday, it's hump day. Tomorrow is Friday, which is Thursday. And we will leave you guys out some good vibrations. And I keep on saying it takes a village to raise a child. Even more so, the store vendor who encourages children by good grades. And this kid was all too happy to come back and show what he did.
Palace store owner is inspiring kids in his community to excel in school who are hungry to do better.
Yo, Alma, I told you I'd get honor roll.
Meet 12-year-old Zamir Davis from New York City.
Oh, way, you did it?
This spirited 7th grader spent the last few months proving he could make the honor roll at his middle school, telling his neighbor and deli owner, Wael Al-Sui, he was going to do it.
He came and showed me his grades the first time. And then I'm like, you know what? Let me see if he's going to keep going. And I would just want to encourage him.
Well, encouraging Zamir and other neighborhood kids to reach their potential.
I've been seeing a lot of kids get honor roll and stuff. And I was like, I want to get honor roll. But then I get merit roll. And I'm like, I don't want merit roll. I want honor roll. So I kept trying and trying.
And after months of trying, Zamir delivering on his promise.
Yo, Alma, I told you I'd get honor roll.
No way, you did it?
Yeah.
No way, let me see, man.
Running back into Wael's store to give him the good news. Zamir getting a 90% average in his last semester and making the honor roll. His prize?
Okay, Zamir, go grab whatever you want.
All right. I want you to make this into an Oreo milkshake.
Getting whatever he wanted in the store. Zamir stocking up on an Oreo milkshake, Doritos, and...
one more thing.
Okay.
A bacon, egg, and cheese.
I got you.
Zamir's father grateful to Wael and telling his son the sky's the limit.
I'm very proud of my son. Absolutely, 100%. This is the beginning. You can reach the top if he put his mind to it. Keep going harder. He's going to be my doctor or my lawyer someday.
That's right. Bravo to Zamir.
Yeah, definitely congratulations to that young man. And I keep saying this all the time. Everybody's like, oh, but he's bribing. If you've ever been a parent of a child, you have bribed them. And there's no shame in that. At the same time, look what a kid can accomplish when he's motivated. That is all I'm saying. But you hear from a vendor. The vendor out there, the store vendor was like, you can do better. Show me you can do better. And here's an incentive. It's amazing what kids will do when you give them incentive, isn't it? So again, congratulations to that young man. Congratulations to the village out there that's showing that young man that you are capable. And trust me, kids, if you are listening to the sound of my voice and somehow looked up on this podcast, you are capable. You are definitely empowered, and you can do so much more than what you think you can if you only put your mind to it. So there's my the more you think you know, do kind of thing. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up, guys. Thank you all for watching, for liking, for letting me know, for letting me know this podcast is live. Terrible. That was a terrible segue. Thank you. Really do thank you. And again, some shameless plugging before we do get out of here, guys. Shout out to all those that went to BlurCon that was in DC. I hope you guys had fun. I hope to myself that I would love to be able to go next year, but hopefully I will. But shameless plugging as usual, guys. Please check out blurstation.com. I cannot tell you guys enough that for the simple fact of the matter is, that is the tale we always ask for. It is our Netflix. It is our Amazon Prime. It is the place for people of color and for blurs who enjoy mangas, animes, movies, television shows. It is all there for you to see. $10.99 a month, guys. If you do join, please select the Blurred's Eye View Affinity membership. Please select the Affinity name, my name, Black Spartan. I would certainly appreciate that. But definitely check out blurstation.com when you get a chance. I would certainly appreciate it. Also, we are definitely on Always Record TV. It is an app that is now on the Roku device. It is on Android, so you can see me definitely there, as well as wherever podcasts can be seen or heard under the term How the Frack We Got Here. Also, at the same time, guys, you can find me on the interwebs at Black_Spartan615. I'm usually a pretty friendly person. Just don't make it weird. That's all I ask. You know, I love talking about daily news, politics, video games, things of that nature. Love meeting new people. But again, don't make it weird. Please don't have me block you. Please don't have me do all this stuff. Simply put, guys, be kind. Be kind. Be open. That's all I ask. But Black_Spartan615 is where you can find me. So that also being said, guys, before I wrap this up, again, I keep talking about the political nature of the city, of the country that we live in. Please be active. Please vote. If voting wasn't important, they would not be trying to take it away from you. At the same time, guys, know the candidates that you're voting for, whether it's federal or local. Again, know the candidates that are running for it. And also, if you do also want to run, I promise next week I will show this site. I will show multiple sites to where it'll show you how you can run in your city and state, whether you want to run locally or on the national market. We'll show you how to do that. And of course, if you want to be a public servant, that is in your heart, please do so. But again, guys, please don't have your head in sand. Please be active. I cannot stress that enough. The last thing I'll say about the fact we got here, guys, is all about staying informed. We are not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are simply giving you all the information, allow you to make up your own mind. But we do provide a logical perspective that goes along with it. We do better as a society once we're progressive. We move forward, try to basically change what we've done in the past by making decisions that we should have done back then, but we're doing it now. Like electing our first Black woman Supreme Court, electing our first Black woman to the Federal Board of Governors, electing our first Black woman as Madam Vice President. All great things. When we don't learn from history, we are doing to repeat. That's what we keep asking ourselves. Why does everything go up at our paycheck? Why are we electing different politicians, but still the same old game in Congress? And most importantly, how the frack we got here. Thank you all for watching, guys. Please take care of yourselves and each other. And I promise we'll get through this.